Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast, a podcast about stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. The Filmed Live Musicals website contains information on nearly 200 musicals that have been captured live. Check it out at filmedlivemusicals.com. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another episode of the Filmed Live Musicals podcast. I'm your host, Luisa Lyons, and my guest today is entrepreneur, marketing executive, and CEO and founder of Indie Theater Network, or IFT Network, and IFT Network TV, a new platform dedicated to showcasing independent film and theater. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you for having me, Luisa. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Very excited to chat with you today and learn more about your work. To start us off, what made you fall in love with theater?
Oh, that's a great question. I've always been in the business of creating experiences. And I think there's so many variables to the experience of sitting down and just having an actor create a character in front of you, or a cast create these characters in front of you and portray these moments and just take you away. It's in person, you're in the space, you're sharing it with others. I think to me that's captivating in so many ways. I've been working in this space since 2008. I did a little bit in high school, but in 2008, I met my production partner, our posthumous founder. His name is Tony White. He was an actor and a producer and a director, and I was a graphic designer, and he got me back into the world of theater slowly but surely. But he did. It's all his fault.
Did you grow up going to the theater?
Actually, we only went to theater for the most part if we were producing it at school. Like the annual production. I was always involved in those, or on school field trips. So I mean, not really. But as an adult, I mean, black box theaters, I've lived in them. I'm a producer, so I'm always involved in the black box 50 seaters, 100 seaters. I love those. Some of the great stories are told in those spaces. But for the most part, it's something I'm trying to create now. So my time in the theater hopefully will be as a producer all the time.
What a dream.
I know.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I was born in the Bronx. I'm fortunate to have experienced living in every borough in my lifetime, which is very interesting. You just learn about people, and I love to learn about people. And one of the fun things about this job is meeting all the different producers. And we're global. We have people from all over the world. So just meeting them and hearing their stories, their journeys, and where they're headed is always a fun part of the conversation as well. And so, yeah, I grew up in New York, but I feel like we meet so many people on this journey now, CEO at IFT, that we feel like we're a little bit of everywhere.
You mentioned that you came to theater via graphic design. Was design more your background? Is that what you studied?
Exactly. I am a graphic designer first and foremost. That's how I got my comeuppance. I've been graphic designer since, I guess, after college. Because in college, I was learning the old school way of doing certain things, and the computers weren't really a big thing yet. But in the outside world, outside of school, it was. It was very much growing and growing rapidly. So when I got out of school, I thought it was hot stuff, and they were looking at me as a young person saying, "You're like an old person. You don't know any of the new stuff. What's going on?" So I'm self-taught in a lot of what I know today, and I'm more of a visual communicator. I love to create visually and give messages visually.
How did the relationship with Tony White come about?
Oh, I love this question. All right, so I worked in newspapers for most of my professional career up until 2012. Before 2008, I worked at the Village Voice. In the Village Voice, I was in the union. I was just, one of the crew. But for 2008 to 2012, I was in management, and I was in charge of laying out the newspaper at AM New York. And we had deadlines, and Tony was always late. So my first 3 months, I remember it was April, May, and June. Tony and I were arch enemies. Like, he was always late, always making me late and my team late and changing the layout end of the day. And so finally one day in the summer, I see Tony in a trench coat, middle of June, and it's like super hot, and there's papers falling from his side, and he's got a trench coat on, and he's a hot mess. And I look at him, and I'm like, "Where are you coming from?" And he's like, "An audition." And I'm like, "An audition for what?" And he's like, "I'm trying to get on Law and Order." And I realized right then he's an actor, and there's no way I'm going to win this fight. He's trying to live his dream, and here I am harping about deadlines. He's like, whatever. And so we became very close friends very quickly, and the rest is kind of history. Almost all the productions that he worked on, I had a hand in, whether it be graphically or marketing wise, or even just load ins, load outs, everything. So we became production partners over time, and it was a very, very good partnership.
So it sounds like you've had experience in kind of all the different facets of theater, like producing it and putting it on the stage and designing it.
Well, that's one of the fun things about this particular level in our space, right? You have the really high level, and you have, some of the lower levels. We're kind of in the middle there, and in this middle ground, as a producer, as an actor, as a writer, as a director, you kind of end up wearing all the hats. Not because you want to, just because most of the time you have to, whether it be budget constraints or you just don't know someone to do that thing you need, and so you just do it yourself. But like most folks, yeah, we wear all the hats, and so we've experienced in some way, shape, or form in doing pretty much any and all roles, from lights to front of house to cleaning up after a show, all of it.
Being a part of the show from like the minute you walk in the door to all aspects of what happens inside that theater.
Yeah, actually, I'll confess, I love working the front of house. Through IFT, we've been able to accumulate a nice audience of people who go to our shows. So we have a nice ticket audience. And I feel if I'm the one inviting them there, I'd like to be the one to greet them and make them feel good. I feel if you make them feel good, they'll go into the theater feeling good, and my cast will pick up that good energy, and then it'll just be a great experience. And that ultimately is my goal, is to create really good experiences. I think when you do that successfully and you invite them to the next thing, they're more likely to come. And so that's one of the reasons why it's important. But I love doing this work. I call it work with an E, because it's just instead of WORK, it's WERK, because we work in entertainment. So I call it work, and it's picking up in the community, which is a lot of fun.
I'm racking my brain where I heard this, and maybe you said it to me the other day when we were chatting, that when people feel welcome into a space just by having a greeter in a space, they'll be willing to spend more money
Absolutely,
because they
absolutely.
feel welcome in the building.
That's true. When you at first, if it's me doing the invitation, I probably have engaged them in some way, shape, or form. So I know their email. When they're checking in, they usually give you their email address. So I already know like how many tickets they have because I prepared the list. So I feel like there's a connection, and I want to make that connection bigger, stronger. And so I'll call them by their first name and just welcome them, and you make them feel good. It's some of the anxiety of like, I don't know what's going on here. I just arrived in this weird space, in this theater. I don't know anyone. Now you kind of know how you have a connection. You're building that connection, and that anxiety level kind of just eases down really quickly. And now they're more likely to not just buy, but to engage other guests, and really build community that way. Because again, these aren't like top of the line shows. These aren't Broadway shows. These are off Broadway productions. I tell my community all the time, no one knows who we are, and it's important that we, as a brand for this that represents this community, does all we can to kind of help everyone learn who we are and who the community is.
Mm.
So much talent across the board. It's just very lucky to be working with so many wonderful people.
Especially New York City.
It
I'm
is.
very I, I'm very curious how this translates to putting theater on screen. How do you create that experience for an audience that's not in the room with you?
Well, that's a great question. Before I say how, I'll say why, because I think the why is just as important. I think a producer, the cast, the crew, they spend weeks and weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks of rehearsals, 2, 3 weeks of performances, and then the show's done, and then what? Right? And so if you have the opportunity in your journey in producing, to put all that investment into a project, and not have something to take away, even if it's just for personal use for that producer to like study and show to future shows. You have to, I think, record at least one performance and do it with multiple cameras. And that's what
Mm.
we do with the multiple cameras. We try to get in and work with the producer and the director to say, what is it that you want to capture? Let's talk about some ideas that we've had. We'll see the show. We'll try to get to a show that's in rehearsal so we can see what they're working on, what the blocking is like, and then come up with a plan with camera positionings and audio planning and just figuring out how the lights work and how the lights will work with the camera work and all that. And so far, we've been successful in capturing or filming several off Broadway and off Broadway productions, which is great. I mean, it's great for the cast and crew. Now they have this extra content that they can put out, even if it's just in small clips of them, performing, which is something that not everyone gets to see the show. So now you give people a
Mm.
glimpse of your people in your network, people in your audience. You give them a glimpse of some of the work you've done, and yeah, I think that's just one of the reasons why and how it's important.
I understand that's a great perspective from a producer, and I wish every producer in New York and across the world agreed with that perspective. I'm curious if watching theater on film was something that you did as an audience member.
Well, I always looked at it where like West Side Story is my ultimate favorite musical. Like the film version of that. The original film is one of my favorites. And so that I feel was always like a thing. I guess it was an influence for me just to be able to see that. Not everyone can get to the show. And I always felt that not being able to access that. Like I love hockey, for example. Hockey's an expensive sport, and it's a very expensive sport to have a ticket, and so to enjoy the sport at home is very similar to the theater. It's very expensive to get to some of these shows, and the best
Mhm.
shows are the most expensive shows for the most part. And so, I mean, if you remember the Hamilton, frenzy when it first came out, it was impossible. It was 3 or 4 months to wait on a ticket just to see if it would be available. And then when you finally had it available, it was, something that for some people was very unattainable. Like it was just, too high a price. And
Mm.
so when Hamilton finally came on to a streamer, we made it an event at my house. Like my kids were already singing the songs for a year or two. I'm like, let's make this an event. So that night that it premiered on the streamer, we were like, we picked our seats, we got some snacks, and we were ready to dig in for this amazing experience. And it was great to see all those performers. It's a huge cast. It's a wonderful musical, but it proves the point where you can and absolutely will succeed with filming theatricals because it's a natural process. We're in that space.
Mm.
The technology is amazing. Coordinating with the stage group and the filming group, we all wear those hats, so we know how to speak the same languages. And ultimately, everyone wants that. Well, one part of the bigger endeavor to succeed because it is capturing this for almost I use the term loosely, but eternity, right? You once the show is closed, you'll never
Mm.
have that experience again. Capturing it and recording the heck out of it in a good production video, I think is healthy for the art. Um, I think it will expose more people to theater, right? It's one thing to go see a show and get influenced and say, I want to do this or try this, versus having access to it at home or remotely and being able to say, wow, this is really cool. I like to try this. I think it just opens the door for more people across the spectrum.
Two things came to mind there when you said capturing it for eternity in quotation marks, and how, even in my lifetime, how technology has so quickly changed, and that, like, VHSs are already like, who has a VHS player
I
anymore, or who
know.
has floppy disk anymore? Like, it's so, that part is fascinating to me. How do we preserve all of this content? And digital poses a whole new problem that film is disintegrating, but if you have no device to play your digital content on, is it going to get lost very quickly? But that's a whole other conversation.
Well, there's that.
And
There's the, and you look on the other side of that spectrum with the cloud, right? And you can
mm,
get on the cloud and you create something digital, you put it in the cloud and it can stay there as long as someone is paying the bill for the storage, essentially. But yeah, ultimately, this digital space that we're in now, it's in the favor of all those involved to do their best to get that thing on, like what they say, in the can. You want to get it in the can because you
Mm.
won't get that experience again. And I think it just favors everyone involved, especially the talent. Like when you talk about lighting, you talk about the actors always, you talk about the director and their amazing blocking and all the stuff that they captured in the experience. But how many other people are involved in a production? You have the set design, you have the lighting, you have all these, the builders, all these different areas of the business. And, in a recording and in capturing that, you give all these people incentive and access and almost, a nice digital resume of some of the work that they've been doing. And I think that's a new thing that we're getting into, beyond just static pictures of like, I built this set, I took pictures, it's on my website. No, now I say, here's some clips of some of the sets I've built, from the videos that we shot them in. And that's when I think that
Mm.
the conversation gets exciting.
Yeah. It's what it also reminded me of as you were talking about access was I remember when I was younger or like a little kid and my mom would comment on the fact that we had access to VHS and like that we could watch musicals over and over and over again, whereas her generation they had to wait till it was, it was either at the cinema and that was it, or once a year on TV and that was kind of it. And now with the internet at our fingertips, we can access just about anything, although there is another whole conversation about how
Yeah.
content is not 100% available online.
Well, it's the speed of
But
it
yeah,
too. The speed of
yeah.
it, where you had to wait till Friday night once upon a time for a new show. Now it's like it's just available instantly. And a lot of our, um, older IPs, some of the stuff from the 80s and the 90s, it's available online in moments. And so, yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Mm. Yeah, very exciting. So that brings us to your platform and what I know that Tony White comes back into the story here. What
Yes.
inspired you to create IFT Network?
Ultimately, yes, Tony's a big part of that influence. He was for 25 years, he worked in the off Broadway community. Um, he knew of Fafillian actors. It is New York City. There are Fafillian actors here. Um, but he often, one of the best stories told about Tony, and I'll say this through our friend Maggie. She tells a story how Tony White could be at a restaurant with you, and you'll find out that the waiter is an actor, and he'll say, "Here's my card." He'd give him his newspaper business card. It's the only business card he
Mm.
had. And like 3 weeks later, that waiter who you met is now playing a small role in one of the shows that Tony's producing because he's produced so many. And, the guy would be good. He would be really good. And it's, Maggie's story, but it's a fact. I've seen him do this. And so it's just, giving all those people their start in a place that's so predatory, it's so hard to get that first break. Tony was what we call the actor's angel, and so, in essence, capturing that and building that on a bigger scale, being able to be almost like a kiosk for this global community of people who want to create stuff and they just don't know how to get started. And one of the biggest, I don't want to call it a mistake, but one of the biggest things that we do in that we emulate. And emulating Hollywood and Broadway is not fair because we don't have Hollywood and Broadway budgets. And so when you're starting out and you're indie, one of the biggest, voids that I found was people didn't have the information on how to get started. They didn't know people that can do certain things that maybe they didn't know how to do. And so now,
Mm.
not just through our streaming platform, but through our networking, through our community. Tonight we have a writing room soon. So that networking connects all these amazing artists, and these amazing artists can then go now and create together. And I think that's something that empowerment is something that is really, um, has been and continues to be, one of the reasons why we keep doing what we're doing. And it's a huge influence for us.
And when we were talking earlier, I was so excited by this idea of supporting artists from the development phase all the way through to streaming. The streaming is kind of the tip of the iceberg. So, can you talk us through this unique three pillar model?
I'd love to. I love to tell this story. So great. We're celebrating right now our unofficial 2 year anniversary. We kind of kicked off this brand in 2021. Um, we launched our writing room in April, although we started testing it out in January just to figure out what the heck we're doing. And then we launched a streamer in May on Star Wars Day, May 4th, 2021. But since then, we've created a three pillar system. Basically, a writer doesn't write one script. A filmmaker doesn't usually make just one film, and a theater producer doesn't usually just produce one show. And so, what we've done in our three pillar system, our first pillar is our development pillar. It's our IFT Network writing room. Every Tuesday night on Zoom, we meet on Zoom 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. But time zones really don't matter anymore because we get writers from all across the globe. We've had New Zealand recently, Australia. We had a Russian in the UK, which is awesome because it was like multiple pushpins in one night. But it's totally free. We read the script out loud. We can help the writer book or cast the actors for the reading. And after the reading, we perform a critique or a talkback. We have 3 to 4 script doctors in house who are on our team, and they start the talkback, and we try to empower every writer with the tools they need to keep moving that script forward. So essentially, that is our pillar, our first pillar, our development pillar, the IFT Network Writing Room. The second pillar is our
Before
production.
you go
Oh
on,
yeah, sure.
sorry, before you go on, how do people apply to be a part of the writing room?
So there's no application process per se. We go to iftnetwork.com/writing dash room, and a lot of the information is there. Basically, you tell us if you want to be a reader, you can join us to be a reader. If you have a script, it's a very popular space because it is free. So we usually have a 3 month waiting period. Right now, we're booked all the way through May. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Hey.
Yeah, so I mean, um, then that's if you're a writer and you want us to read the script. But we always encourage anyone who's interested to just check it out, sit in, see how the process goes, and educate yourself with just what the heck goes on in there. And and plus it's good networking. You get to meet some really fun people, and most of the folks come every week, so they're dedicated, and that's really the key is that these people care and they want to help these writers empowered with the tools they need to move forward. So that's really exciting.
Mm. Oh, that's so wonderful. I love how open it is that it is free to participate. And even if there is a little waiting list
Yeah, it's
to get
fun.
your work read.
We do have options where you can pay if you need to hear the script sooner, and we can offer that. We also have script doctors for hire. So, say for example, you have the reading in the writing room, and you have really good feedback, and you think the script is almost there. We have different levels where you can hire one script doctor or 2 script doctors and work with them one on one to really push your script forward. So we have, again, as many tools as we can, all really based off community feedback. We've been doing it for 2 years now. Over 85 scripts have been read. Some of them have even gone on to produce. I'm shooting for the first time next month a 5 page script that we read in the room. So a lot of the development that has gone on, these films and shows, and they're all going out to get made. Not all, excuse me, but several have, some of that energy, and that's the magic, really. That's really what it's all about.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And how fun to see that progress too from page to stage or page to screen.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah. So you were starting to talk about the second pillar.
Yes, our second pillar is our production and marketing pillar. Essentially, before the pandemic, I owned a marketing agency working with small businesses, but pandemic closed down all the small businesses. So IFT Network is absolutely my pivot. I essentially took this marketing agency and brought it into IFT. It's called the IFT Network Creative Agency. And basically, we can do pretty much whatever a producer needs. So from filming a live theatrical, connecting them to the network with different folks they may need for production. If they need artwork for their film poster, we have our own, Everyone goes to Broadway, gets a little theater program. We have our own called the Curtain Call. We help with marketing for, say, a theater production to help get butts in seats, as they say. Anything you need as a producer, we can either do it ourselves or have someone who can help that producer in that space. So it's a full service production and marketing agency.
Wow, it's so unique to have that part of it as part of the parcel of the platform.
It's built specifically because in this space, these producers really need these services. We really built everything about IFT is built by the necessity of this amazing global underrepresented community. And so we understand that, first of all, they want to be seen and heard. All of us do. And what we are able to do through our agency is we're able to give them the look and feel of a Broadway in Hollywood without the cost of Broadway in Hollywood. And so bringing our experience of marketing and our promotional, I am an award-winning marketing executive. I won an award in 2010 for True Blood campaign we did at the HBO's True Blood. ADWEEK gave us a little award that year. So it was kind of a origin story. I didn't know I would be doing this, but here I am working with IPs all day long. I love it. But it really does. It's also an education process because every producer I sit down with, we talk about strategies. We talk about how did we get those people to, see your show and come to it. And so that's an exploratory process. It's almost a partnership, and you have to build trust to really get there. And that's really one of the wonderful parts of this position is working with so many different producers, understanding what their purpose is, the purpose behind their script, and what and how we can do to make that purpose fulfilled. And so we're not always successful. I'll be the first one to admit it's a very difficult space. But what I am happy to say is that we are growing every month. And in the weeks and months, we will have enough audience that, when we do some of these shows, we'll be able to support the show directly. And that's exciting.
That is very exciting.
Yeah.
I just to kind of rewind a little bit, I'm curious where did your graphic design kind of lead you into film or like making film?
So Tony White was in film and theater. And so in that space, you meet film producers and theater producers. And so we build websites. I built a website for a film called The Reunion Film by Dave Rosenberg. His journey was a 20-year journey. It's a wonderful film. It's available everywhere. You can check out thereunionfilm.com. Essentially, I'm an associate producer on this film, uncredited. I have to talk to David about that. But the point is that we've been on this journey now for almost 4.5 years with this film, just through the website and just seeing how before it got made and his journey in film and fundraising and editing the script and casting. That whole journey was a learning process. I've been on some smaller films. There's a nice film called Sunflower by Matt Thomas Berta, who we also an AP on that. And so film, it comes with the territory. These actors, these producers, they're gonna dive into whatever is active. So whether it be a theater hat, a film hat, they're gonna wear them. And so I guess that's like a guilt by association, how we got into film. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. And so that brings us to the third pillar, which is the distribution and streaming.
Yes, IFT Network TV. It's available on the app and Play Store. Again, as I said earlier, we launched May 4th, 2021. It's a very basic app today, but we are working with developers to launch our next app. The new and improved IFT Network TV should be out in the fall. Essentially, we are a revenue share streaming platform. So all the producers who have a title on our platform share revenue. So whereas YouTube and all these other platforms that you can put your film or your theatrical video on, takes a little bit longer to monetize. The minute that a film is accepted into our platform, it begins to accrue, and it's all by percentage. So each particular title has a runtime. We take that runtime versus the full library's runtime. That creates a percentage, and the subscription per month is $5.99 after 30 days free trial. And then from $5.99, we take $2.50. We put it into the producers pool, and that is split amongst all the producers. As we add more content, percentages do decrease. But as we increase our subscribership, the money that they accrue each month either stays the same or increases. So that's what's really exciting about this. This is my evil plan to take over the universe through my little band of independent filmmakers and theater producers across the globe is with our little streaming platform. These are the voices that are, as I said, this is an underrepresented community, grossly overlooked. It's global. There's so many different amazing stories from all across the spectrum. And let's face it, no one's giving them the time of day. I love quality experiences, and although we don't know who this producer or these actors are, they are creating some really amazing experiences. And so, essentially, if you have an amazing experience on film, we want to check it out and hopefully add it to the platform. We have series, so we have full series like episode 1 through 10. We have short films, we have micro shorts, and we have features. Um, Essentially, we started trying to let everyone on, but there's a quality control system in place now where we're trying to, improve the content, improve the quality, improve the sound and what people are looking at. Because let's face it, the TVs that people are watching this stuff on are incredible, and so the sound
Yeah.
quality and the visual production quality has to be amazing too. So.
What are some highlights of what's currently playing?
Oh wow! So I have some really wonderful series. For example, I should say we have a wonderful series called Momtress. Stars Liz Samuel that people really love. There's another series called After with Joshua Schubart that people really love. Um, Brian Michael Smith from Lone Star 911 is in that series. We have some wonderful films, too many to mention. I mean, it goes on and on. We have some wonderful theater titles about Betty Davis, Safe for Sissies. That's with Jessica Scher. She's wonderful. Does a great Betty Davis. Oh my God. And that's the key. It's an early library, and as I said, we just announced today we have some new content coming on. We just did a poetry slam in the Bronx, New York,
Oh, fun.
just this December. Yeah, so that's coming in February. We have a new short film coming called oh my goodness. Oh, I just sent the email blast out today. What the heck is this called? A Lone Star Love. It's a 20-minute short. It's an interesting piece, very very well done. The libraries, I'm confident with the library we have. I think there's some really fun experiences on there, and I think it's the sky's the limit because there's so much wonderful content out there. What I will say is that for this particular platform, I think it is important that people know. Um, we usually like to take the films in after they've done their film festival circuit. So after they've gone on their promotion and marketing tour and they're out there getting all their laurels and they find out how wonderful their film is, I think that's the best time. I think some film festivals have rules against streaming and that sort of thing. So we encourage everyone to
Interesting.
go have a blast on the film festival circuit. Let us, we can queue it up and let us know if they want to come on the platform at the end of their festival run. And should they, we'll help them with those last few dates to try to get some marketing and publicity out and know that, if it's a quality experience, they're very likely to have a home at IFT Network TV.
Mm. What do you recommend for theater productions? Because it's quite unusual for a theater production to go on the film circuit. Um,
It is. And
yeah.
so something like that is, again, it's if they're filming it, there are certain rules and regulations with equity and SAG that we have to pay attention to. But if they meet all the criteria, which there is a criteria that a production has to meet, what we usually recommend is if they're in pre-production. In other words, if you've not cast a single cast member yet, that is probably the best time to reach out about filming a production because that way we can kind of help in the process of casting so that we don't get into an expensive endeavor and casting to where um, the space works. Some folks like to produce in certain spaces, and great, but not all spaces work. for capturing or filming the production. So some of those things are better spoken about early in the production or pre-production before they've even put a theater deposit or casted one single person for the cast. Those are the best times um, because there's so many variables involved, and there's nothing cheap about art. And we don't want to take away from the production itself. We want the production to be very strong, and so we try to get involved early in the conversation to kind of manage those expectations, and of course deliver with a successful production at the end, both on
Mm.
stage and in
Do you,
video.
do you help people like I know that equity particularly has very strict rules and that it can be quite expensive for smaller productions to film. Um, do you help with those negotiations, or is that kind of up to each individual production?
It's up to each individual production. We try to stay in our lane. Honestly, it's a bigger conversation. I think part of it is, um, I think equity needs to update some of its rules. I think there are productions. If you're doing less than 200 seats, I think there's certain variables that equity should look at to make it a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but more attainable, to record and have access and those sorts of things. Because if they really support the actor, then they should be allowing the actors and those producers to get as much positive burn from these experiences as possible. And not every
Mm.
show is going to be sold out. That's just not, it's not logical. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
to have, limited resources and then have all these high expectations from third parties that really don't add value to the production, it's tough. But then at the
Mm.
same time, they can shut you down in a heartbeat, and that's no fun either. I've been there too. I've been shut down several times. It's not fun. Um,
Mm.
it's expensive. There's again nothing cheap about art, and you don't get that money back. You don't get that refund. You don't get that deposit back from the theater. You don't get, it's tough. And so you want to have a safe environment for your actors and your crew always. You want to make sure that everyone's taken care of, right? They have their families to feed and themselves to feed always. I think something out of post COVID, I think most of our communities either getting paid full rate or even a little more nowadays, which is exciting. They're making sure that they're
Yeah.
getting their checks, which is good. They deserve it. And then with equity, I think it's important for them to explore the smaller shows and help them form a foundation where they can actually have a little bit more longevity. And I think recording some of these shows would help them do that.
Yeah, I'm really curious how the League of Live Streamed Theater that has been newly formed and is helping to stream the latest play from Second Stage. I'm curious how that will support not just Broadway shows, but like these black box theater shows too.
Hmm.
What do you see as the future of streaming theater?
Interesting. I have so many ideas about this. I mean, you know, I love theater. I think it's an important medium. I don't think there's, I think as a viewer, an audience member, just sitting there and watching these actors create, I think that's amazing. I think um, the questions that come from some of the content that we watch in theater makes us question ourselves in the moment when you see a reflection of yourself in a character. And I think being able to take that and bring that to a bigger scale, a bigger medium, I think that is absolutely important.
Hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Um, I've I'm so excited to see the future of IFT Network and to see it continue to grow and to see what comes next for it. This next section is called My Favorite Things, where I ask you my favorite questions.
These are a few of my favorite things.
To start us off, oh, you've already told us your favorite musical, which was West Side Story.
Yeah.
Uh, do you have a favorite musical that has been filmed live on stage?
The musical I would have to say would be Hamilton. I love that production. I really do. I love the costumes. I love everything about it.
Glorious. I love it. A filmed stage show is not exactly a stage show, and it's not exactly a film. So what should we call them?
Huh. Well, and it's a tricky thing. I kind of refer to them as theatrical productions, so theatrical films, or to capture a theatrical performance. I think there's not one word that can do justice to this, but I call it IFT Network, to be honest. Like that's one of the things that we're so focused on right now. It's That's why I have a big smile on my face, is because that's the one thing that we're really passionate about, is this live theater, on capturing that and recording that, and it's just
Yeah.
so valuable. I mean, I don't know. You have to. I think it goes beyond appreciating what it takes to get prepared for a show, in the 5 and 6 and 10 weeks of rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing. That's one of the most grueling parts of that journey. And so you go on stage, you perform it live, which takes a lot of courage, right? You're doing it day in and day out, and you're delivering and delivering and delivering. It's a lot of energy. But to take that and put it on video and release it out to a much more massive audience, it brings so much more value to the actors, to the production, to the title, the writer. I mean, and I think that's where we lose the focus, when you just stick it all under the business category and forget about the art category in this whole endeavor. I think we get lost. I think you cannot put the art, you can't put the business before the art. I think when we do that, I think we fail. And I think that's part of the
Oh,
reason why we're having a lot of challenges in the space right now.
that's a really, really great answer. I love that. Let's put the art first. And
I think
as
you
you've
have
said like
to.
several times, art is expensive.
Yeah, there's nothing cheap
But
about art. It really isn't. I'll quickly tell you that story. I grew up um, poor middle class, and I was on college my first week. It was a graphic design class, my very first class. Everyone had all their stuff, all their art supplies, their markers, their paper, everything. I didn't have anything. And I'm sitting there on a drafting table, and everyone's got their stuff but me. I didn't have any money yet. I was still waiting on my financial aid to come through. And the professor, beautiful lady from Atlanta, Georgia, her name was Dorothy E. Hayes, no longer with us. She walked the room for 2 minutes and just stared at me and said, "There's nothing cheap about art. There's nothing cheap about art." It was the most embarrassing moment of my life, but I will never forget that there is nothing cheap about art. Like, if you want to do something in the art space, be prepared, because it's going to be expensive. And it is. It's just, if you're a painter, it's expensive. If you're a musician, it's expensive. So when you're an actor and a producer and a director and a filmmaker, it's expensive. And so respect the game.
I'm picturing a fourth arm of IFT in the future where it's a funding
We're
a
working on
funding
that,
arm.
actually. We're actually working on that.
There you go.
I've been working with. So IoT is a startup, and so we've been talking to a lot of high net worth individuals in the last 6 months, trying to raise our $500,000 for our pre-seed round. We do have some traction. We just got our first term sheet last week, and we are exploring avenues where we can get crowdfunding for a slate of IPs, or in this case, scripts. We feel all developed
Yeah.
through IFT Network. So yeah, we're working on that as we speak.
That's I shouldn't be surprised because you are looking everything so holistically and you understand everything from the ground up. So I'm not even a little bit surprised. Next question, where do you stand on bootlegs?
Bootlegs are bad, and I'll say the one reason why they're very bad. And I'm a pirate at heart, so I'll just say that first. Okay, I love piracy. I understand piracy, but piracy is done for all the wrong reasons. And in this particular case, um, it sucks because the writer, the artists, those people who create all the people involved, they're not seeing their fair share, right? And so that's where piracy is just, you can't have it. It's just not acceptable.
Mm.
If you're out there and you're pirating stuff, I hope your cloud bursts and then all your files are gone. Like, it's not good.
What stage musicals do you wish had been filmed live on stage?
That's interesting. Stage musicals. I don't know, but if there was anything that was dark and Dracula-ish, that would be great. My knowledge of the library doesn't go as deep as I would like to answer that question. And then at the same time, a lot of the more popular ones from recent history are all basically on video somewhere. So it's like I have to think back a little bit and say, I don't know, I haven't really watched. I didn't go to theater back then enough, especially musicals, enough to see and say this particular title is something I would like to see.
It makes me wonder, do you know Lestat?
I do. Yes. See, that's exactly right.
I wonder if that is on film.
definitely one that yeah.
I'm not sure if it has been filmed. I haven't come across it, but there are so many films that I don't know about out there that, even after 10 years of research, I'm amazed by what keeps popping up. What stage musicals would you like to see filmed live on stage in the future?
Oh, wow. I think some of the more recent ones that have closed, I think those would be interesting. I think they had a huge fan base. There was a Korean show that I really wanted to go watch that recently closed.
K-pop?
Yeah, the K-pop show. I wanted to see that. There's a show 6 that I hear is a lot of fun with the 6 Wives of Henry VIII.
Luckily, they filmed that in the West End. I'm just waiting for that release date.
Yeah, so I know the stuff is there. I think it's just a matter of, I think it should be done with every show, to be honest. I think, again, the value that it brings to the performance, to the people involved. Like, if you can say, hey, I worked on this particular show on Broadway. Oh, but yeah, you can also go see it on XYZ streaming. That's, to me, added value. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Finally, where can we find you online?
Oh, my goodness. So everyone can just go to IFTnetwork.com and you reach the contact page. You'll reach me. I'm also, again, any channel on social media. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You and I connected on Twitter, which is great. Twitter is a good place to start. IFT Network TV. All the channels are the same name. Yeah.
Wonderful. Jay, thank you so much for your time today. I'm excited to see where IFT Network goes next. And we will have links to all of your social media in the show notes.
Wonderful. Luisa, thank you for having us. I'm very excited for this. Is our first podcast, my first podcast. So thank you for making this a wonderful experience.
The Filmed Live Musicals podcast is created and edited by your host, Luisa Lyons. FilmedLiveMusicals.com is where musicals come home. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Shout out and all the thank yous to our wonderful patrons, Josh Brandon, Geraldine Brewer, Belinda Broido, Andy Capone, Elliot Charles, Rachel Esteban, Mercedes Esteban Lyons, Hannah Graneman, James T. Lane, Allison Matthews, Al Monaco, David Negrin, Jesse Rabinowitz and Brenda Goodman, David and Catherine Rabinowitz, Joe Tilliston, and Beck Twist. Patrons generously provide financial support to preserve the history of film stage musicals and the creation of one easy place to find them all. If you would like to support the site, receive early access to this very podcast, and early access to site content, become a Filmed Live Musicals patron for as little as $3 a month. Visit filmedlivemusicals.com to learn more. If you like what you hear, please leave a review on Apple Music. It really helps to get the word out about the show. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening.